I wrote her name because I think my mom is one of the most strongest people I've ever met.
I wrote April on my bracelet because her story gives me strength.
I wrote my daughter and son's names, Lydia and Lucas, because I want them to live in a world that's more safe.
I wrote to brave, strong women everywhere because that's what I feel.
I wrote my niece Bristol's name, mainly because I don't want her to grow up in a world where she has to worry about sexual assault or domestic violence being a part of her life.
So I wrote a little boy's name that I know, John, who's witnessed a lot of domestic violence in his life. And although we're making so much progress as our community, there's still more work to be done.
It's easier to be a bystander. As a survivor and an advocate, I appreciate and am so grateful for the people who are upstanders.
And I put her name on my wristband because she believes in people when they may not believe in themselves.
She died a few years ago and she's still in my heart, and she touched so many survivors' lives, and she was a survivor herself.
Mothers, daughters, aunties, sisters.
And I do this for all the women in my life because women in this country and the world deserve much better than they have.
She's a survivor of so many traumas, and yet every time I see her, she helps everybody she can, and she makes the world a brighter place.
I put Dana because she lost her life to domestic violence, and through an awareness campaign like this, my hope is that other folks will not have the same experience.
I wrote them because I want them to grow up in a safe, beautiful world where they'll be welcome and loved regardless of their age, gender, or race.
So I wrote the word family. Early on, when I started to learn about domestic abuse and violence and talk about it, it felt distant. And the more I learned and the more I talked and the more I engaged with those that were closest to me, I learned that this is something that impacts almost everyone on a very personal, familial level. So I wrote it thinking about family members that I know that have had to deal with it. I wrote it thinking about my current family, particularly my 2 young daughters and my wife, and how this is personal to me, that I make sure that I do everything in my power to ensure that they never have to deal with domestic violence. And I wrote it to encourage others to think about how their families may be impacted, and more importantly, how you work to stop it.